Is it a man's job to initiate sex? How often, what percentage of the time should a man initiate the sex versus a woman, or does it just not matter at all? Hey, it's Alex Holman from Revolutionary Sex. I'm here in Chicago, and today I want to talk to you about initiating sex, who's supposed to start sex, and I also want to talk a little bit about sexual polarity, that thing that creates or is mainly responsible for creating sexual attraction for couples. Now, sexual attraction obviously has a lot of components, including things like physical attractiveness and things like that. But that stuff wears off pretty quickly if you're in a relationship that lasts more than a couple of months. And what does last for most couples in terms of sexual attraction is sexual polarity, which is an idea that was first spoken by a man named David Data, who also writes a lot of books about sex and intimacy. And any man who hasn't read his book, The Way of the Superior Man, needs to just stop watching the video right now and go buy that book on Amazon. This idea of sexual polarity is a good one. And sexual polarity is the root of the most important impulse of sexual attraction between men and women. And that brings me back to an email that I received very recently from a guy who was saying that he initiates sex about 90% of the time, and his wife initiates sex about 10% of the time, and is this okay? And he doesn't feel good about it. And my answer to that is twofold. First of all, she's probably initiating sex more often than you think. It's just that women don't initiate sex the same way that men do, or at least not women who are acting from their feminine polarity. And again, this idea of masculine-feminine polarity changes the way we behave in different situations. So the masculine way of initiating sex is to pick your woman up, spin her around, kiss her, tickle her, throw her onto the bed, and then slowly seduce her. The feminine way of initiating sex is to very subtly make it known that she's available. And in fact, the more feminine a woman is, the more she's acting from her feminine impulse towards her sexuality, the more subtle her little gentle invitation for sex becomes. And so what happens for a lot of couples is that the woman is actually initiating more often than the man, but the man thinks he's initiating every single time. A lot of times when a woman makes these subtle overtures to let her man know that she's available, and he's picking up on that on some level, he then doesn't really do his part of stepping in and leading. More often than not, throughout the course of the relationship, he becomes aware that she hasn't been initiating, even though she has in this more subtle feminine way, and that awareness makes him feel a little insecure about it. And so more and more, when he does become aware that she's in the mood, which is actually something kind of active that she's doing to let him know that she's in the mood, he'll just kind of take her hand, lead her to the bedroom, and start taking off his clothing. And for a lot of men, they feel like, well, that's what marriage is about. It's the whole point of getting married, is that I don't have to go through the effort of seducing anymore because she's my wife. Like, sex is just on the table, it's guaranteed. And this is very disappointing for a woman, because what's happening is she's doing her part. She's doing her little feminine, I'm available, and he's not really doing his part. And we're all guilty of this. I've been guilty of this. It's easy to just take things for granted and not make the effort to actually be a man and give her that masculine impulse that you have of being more active in leading her to the bedroom and in properly seducing her by making it fun, and by touching and by kissing and by working the mood from wherever you are, from whatever neutral space you are, into a more sexual and erotic place, and making it enjoyable. And in the same way, ladies, if you feel like you're in a position where it's uncomfortable to initiate sex and it doesn't seem to be, that's because when you've done it in the past, it's begun to sort of rob him of his masculine energy, and there's a possibility for you to get really expert at these subtle cues of inviting him, which is the feminine way of initiating sex. And even, as I said, there's a level where women are so in their feminine energy that not only are they inviting sex, but they're actually coyly sort of refusing it. They're kind of like, oh, don't look at me that way. I see the way, don't look at me that way. They're actually coyly refusing sex. There's that sense of becoming not just like, hey, I'm available, look at me, but I'm not available to you. And that's enticing to men. That actually is such a feminine play that it arouses our masculine. So play around with this a little bit. Initiating sex isn't as hard as people make it out to be. It's not as threatening as people make it out to be. It really is part of the play and the fun, not just for single people, but for people in long-term relationships. Don't lose this play, and don't lose this opportunity to play in your masculine and feminine space, this polarity, this space of polarity, because too often in life, this polarity is robbed from us in the participation as a married team going through life, or a couple who are paying bills together, paying rent together, and dealing with all the daily doings of life. It's easy to lose your sexual polarity. So don't spare the tickle fights, don't spare the playfulness, don't spare the aggressiveness and the submissiveness. You don't want to waste the precious opportunity for that enjoyment. It's Alex Holman with Revolutionary Sex. Talk to you again next week.